January transitioned smoothly into February, and an entirely unexpected phenomenon manifested within my reality. My daily existence became profoundly quiet. Not empty or isolated, simply profoundly quiet. The specific variety of peace that manifests when an individual permanently relinquishes a massive physical weight so incredibly familiar you completely forgot it was constantly there. Without $1,720 every single month migrating to a residential structure I did not inhabit, my personal checking account executed an action it had never accomplished in its history. It expanded significantly. I established a fresh investment portal, a basic low-fee index fund. Nothing overly complicated. I acquired a genuine, high-quality living room sofa to permanently replace the thrift store unit I had utilized since my initial apartment, the one featuring an internal metal spring that consistently punctured through the left seating cushion. I enrolled in a physical wellness class at the community facility in the next town. Tuesday and Thursday evenings. I had never previously engaged in that discipline. It turned out I thoroughly enjoyed the practice. My senior partner provided me with direct access to 3 entirely fresh private bookkeeping clients, all operating small independent businesses within the immediate region. My independent contract revenue surged by $22,000 annually. And I finally executed an action I had been mentally calculating for several months. I officially registered a brand new limited liability company with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Juergens and Associates Consulting. Exactly $125 for the official state filing fee. The moment the formal certificate of formation arrived in the postal mail, I secured it inside a premium frame and suspended it proudly on the wall space directly above my working desk. It constituted the absolute first legal document bearing my family's surname that I felt immense pride to display publicly. My very first authentic family portrait, in a metaphorical sense. In the meantime, 25 miles to the west, the family residence was visibly fracturing at its structural seams. The lawn turf expanded excessively tall because my father lacked the physical capacity to operate the machinery with his damaged back, and my brother claimed he was far too occupied with his grand business operations. The specific business model that existed exclusively as a corporate filing with a completely drained financial repository. The localized utility corporation completely terminated electrical service for a full week before my father managed to settle the invoice personally utilizing his monthly disability allocation check. The primary porch illumination went completely dark. The metallic flag mounting bracket adjacent to the main entryway lost a structural screw and suspended completely sideways. Not a single person bothered to repair it. The longtime neighbor materialized beside me at the convenience station on a Saturday morning in late February. I was in the process of purchasing a hot beverage and a piece of fruit, my standard nutritional fuel prior to a morning run. She was 72 years old, standing 5 feet tall, and had inhabited the residential structure directly adjacent to the family house for over 3 decades. She had observed my entire growth from childhood. Darling. She positioned her hand gently on my forearm near the beverage customization station. Your mother has been actively informing the neighborhood that you completely abandoned them in their hour of need. That you simply ceased caring for their survival. I quietly stirred my beverage. I am aware of the rumors. But I have personally observed you, child, every single Saturday morning for years, reversing your vehicle into that concrete driveway laden with heavy grocery containers. I personally witnessed you clearing that lawn turf in the peak of July when the temperature reached 95 degrees and your father lacked the capacity to stand upright. I witnessed you carry that massive holiday meal up those wooden entryway steps every single autumn since you were 23 years old. I comprehend exactly how much you sacrificed for that family unit. She compressed my forearm gently. And I fully comprehend exactly what they inflicted upon you in return. I chose not to offer an immediate verbal response, not because I was overcome with raw emotion, but because I was internally recalculating the master ledger. The neighbor wasn't the singular individual within the community who had observed the true dynamics. Word was systematically radiating through the populace, not because I was actively broadcasting the details to anyone. I had maintained absolute silence regarding the situation to every single individual outside of my senior partner and my legal representative. But the town comprises barely 4,000 total inhabitants, and local memories run exceptionally long. Citizens naturally connected the logical dots. The quiet child who supplied baked goods to every single community gathering, who contributed resources to every single local fundraiser, who quietly settled the congregation's landscaping invoices anonymously for 3 consecutive years. That specific individual does not simply abandon their aging parents without a profound underlying reason. The minister contacted my mother the subsequent Sunday afternoon. Is there perhaps a significant element of this narrative you are failing to disclose to us regarding your child? My mother responded sharply, she is entirely self-absorbed. The minister countered softly, we are discussing the individual who financed every single community event for a decade. Absolute silence ensued on the line. In the meantime, the accomplice received an official certified communication from the State Department. His professional legal notary authorization was officially placed under comprehensive structural review. The identity theft affidavit I submitted had triggered a massive institutional review within the bank, and the financial cooperative had formally flagged the specific notarization stamp. The accomplice contacted my brother that identical afternoon. I am completely finished shielding your illegal activities. Solve this crisis entirely on your own from this point forward. In the final days of March, the financial cooperative officially recorded a formal notice of public trustee sale with the Regional Records Office, a public foreclosure auction scheduled in exactly 30 days. The official legal document materialized at the family residence on a Wednesday afternoon. My mother read the text standing directly at the kitchen counter space, then placed the paper flat on the table surface without uttering a single word. My father informed me much later, months down the road, that she remained seated in that identical dining chair for 2 full hours without executing a single movement. The residential structure, featuring 4 bedrooms, 1.5 bathrooms, constructed originally in 1987, the precise year my father and mother were united in marriage. The kitchen space where my mother historically prepared my brother's anniversary cakes, consistently chocolate flavor, consistently featuring his name traced carefully in blue frosting. The primary living space where the annual holiday photograph was captured every single calendar cycle. 3 smiling individuals, never 4. Current market valuation hovered around $180,000. The outstanding primary mortgage balance sat at $94,000. The outstanding secondary fraudulent mortgage debt engineered by my brother sat at $47,000. The structural math was exceptionally unfavorable and deteriorating rapidly. My mother contacted my line one absolute final time. There was 0 vocal shouting, 0 citations of religious scripture, 0 explosive accusations. Simply a vocal delivery I had never once experienced from her throughout my entire existence, flat, remarkably small, completely emptied of all internal force. Please, I require your assistance. I lack the capacity to assist you, Mother. You mean you explicitly refuse to assist us? I mean that I am structurally incapable of doing so. You personally ensured that reality during the holiday feast. She remained completely silent for an exceptionally long duration. I could distinctly discern the mechanical ticking of the kitchen wall clock in the background, the time indicator shaped like a rooster that had remained suspended on that drywall since I was 6 years old. You will live to deeply regret this decision, she whispered. But the vocal delivery carried absolutely no underlying strength. She was articulating the phrase simply because she possessed absolutely nothing else remaining to project. I terminated the connection, placed my mobile device flat against the kitchen counter space, and gazed intently at the framed corporate certificate suspended on my wall, Juergens and Associates Consulting. I possessed exactly 30 days remaining on the clock. I convened with my legal representative at his office space in the city center on a Thursday afternoon. The scheduled public foreclosure auction, I stated clearly. Who exactly is permitted to submit financial bids? Is it open to anyone? Any independent individual, registered limited liability company, or corporate entity possessing liquid cash resources or verified certified funds. It constitutes a completely public auction mechanism. Is my registered consulting entity legally permitted to present a bid? He laid his writing instrument down on the desk surface. Your firm, yes. He studied my expression for a brief moment. From a strict legal standpoint, there exists absolutely 0 prohibition preventing this action. The limited liability company functions as a completely independent legal entity. It possesses its own unique employer identification number, its own dedicated commercial repository, and its own binding operating agreement. The mere reality that you share a common family surname with the current property owners does not constitute a disqualifying factor in any way. What is the anticipated minimum financial bid likely to be established? He accessed historical real estate sales data on his computer screen. Foreclosure real estate properties within rural regions of the state were consistently clearing at 60 to 70% of their true market valuation. You are looking at a target range between $110,000 to $125,000. I opened my portable computer directly on his desk surface and displayed my aggregate financial balances. Personal cash reserves, $89,000. The direct result of 8 full years of surviving exceptionally modestly and investing consistently. My consulting entity's commercial repository, $45,000. Independent contract revenue I had been systematically funneling into the firm since its initial registration. My senior partner had also offered to advance my annual corporate bonus early, totaling $8,000. My aggregate liquid resources stood at $142,000. The attorney analyzed the financial metrics, then shifted his gaze directly to my face. You possess the absolute capacity to execute this plan. I am fully aware. I have been systematically calculating this mathematical equation ever since the holiday feast. He reclined comfortably in his chair. When you successfully acquire that residential property, assuming you secure it, what exactly are your long-term plans for the structure? I intend to execute an operational model my mother never once managed. What exactly is that? Construct a space where human beings are made to feel genuinely welcome. He retrieved his writing instrument once more. I will officially register your consulting firm as a certified bidder for the event. You will simply require a verified cashier's check on the day of the proceedings. We shook hands firmly. It represented the most profoundly professional handshake of my entire career, and simultaneously the most deeply personal. My brother materialized at my residential apartment on a Sunday evening. There was zero advance warning, zero digital communication, simply a heavy fist slamming violently against my wooden door with enough structural force to rattle the security chain mechanism. I opened the door partially, keeping the heavy security chain firmly engaged. Through the narrow 3-inch viewing gap, I could distinctly observe his face, entirely unshaven, his eyes heavily bloodshot, clad in the identical hooded sweatshirt he had worn during the holiday feast. You need to immediately withdraw that official identity theft affidavit. Zero introductory greeting, zero conversational lead-in, simply a direct command. If the authorities execute a full investigation, I am facing actual incarceration, sister. You independently executed identity theft and corporate bank fraud. Those constitute serious federal violations, brother. That does not represent my personal problem to solve. I am your biological brother. You are essentially a total stranger who happens to share genetic parents with me. He shifted his physical weight on the landing. Attempted a completely different psychological angle. The exact method he consistently deployed his entire life. A rapid conversational pivot. A redirection of focus. A deployment of personal charm. That methodology had consistently operated successfully on my mother. It had never once functioned effectively on me. I will fully compensate you for the funds. Every single penny. I simply require a brief window of time. Utilizing what resources exactly? Your mobile culinary concept that never actually launched, your speculative digital currency portfolio, or the undeveloped parcel of land that has already collapsed 40% in total market value? His jaw muscles tightened instantly. The superficial charm evaporated completely. What remained exposed underneath was the identical core element that had consistently existed beneath the surface, a man who firmly believed he was automatically entitled to resources he had completely failed to earn. If you refuse to withdraw this investigation, he uttered, his voice dropping to a low hiss, I will personally inform the entire community that you are the singular reason our mother and father are losing their residential home. They already harbor that exact belief. Mother has been actively broadcasting that specific narrative for weeks. He parted his lips to speak, closed them rapidly, and parted them once more. Absolutely nothing coherent emerged from his mouth. I looked at him calmly through the narrow chain opening. My biological brother, 3 years my senior, 3 inches taller than me, and an entire lifetime behind me in every single metric that truly carried value. Have a restful evening, brother. I closed the heavy door completely, rotated the deadbolt mechanism into place, fastened the security chain, walked back to my living room sofa, sat down, and retrieved the text I had been actively reviewing, a pre-owned publication concerning long-term financial architecture I discovered at a local library liquidation sale. Behind me in the entryway, I could faintly hear him remaining stationary in the corridor for another 30 seconds before his retreating footsteps gradually diminished down the concrete stairwell. I had systematically transitioned to attending the early 8 a.m. Sunday service at our local congregation specifically to ensure I avoided any contact with my biological family. My mother consistently attended the 10 a.m. service. I assumed that window provided a sufficient buffer of physical distance. It proved to be entirely insufficient. On the primary Sunday morning in April, I crossed the threshold of the sanctuary at exactly 7:55 and discovered my mother seated directly within the third wooden pew accompanied by 2 prominent church council leaders. They were explicitly waiting for my arrival. Sloan. The senior council leader rose to his feet. He was 70 years old, a retired educator possessing gentle eyes, completely out of his depth in this scenario. We have requested your mother's presence here because we firmly believe in the spiritual doctrine of family reconciliation. The holy text explicitly commands, honor thy father and mother. I immediately completed the sentence for him. I am fully familiar with the scripture. My mother sat with her hands tightly clasped, her chin elevated high, the classic posture of an individual who believed she had assembled the absolute flawless arbitration panel. The holy text additionally states, fathers, provoke not your children to wrath. Ephesians 6 verse 4. I placed my handbag down on the wooden pew structure. And I believe the commandments additionally state, thou shalt not steal. My biological brother completely forged my personal signature on a federal financial document, an unauthorized $47,000 mortgage loan. He systematically utilized my personal social security digits, my excellent credit score, and a cooperative notary acquaintance to secure a massive loan in my legal name without my knowledge or consent. Did my mother bother to mention that specific component of the narrative to this council? Absolute silence enveloped the space. The senior leader shifted his gaze directly toward my mother. The secondary council member shifted her gaze toward my mother. My mother's facial complexion transitioned from absolute composure to deep crimson in less than 2 seconds. That statement is an absolute fabrication. I immediately opened my mobile device screen. I possessed the original mortgage paperwork saved as a clear digital document, displaying the forged signature directly adjacent to my authentic handwriting. I held the screen upward for display. This constitutes my authentic signature. I swiped the screen. This does not. The alphabetical characters are structurally close, but the initial loop travels entirely the incorrect direction. The Federal Trade Commission has been fully notified. The financial institution has officially validated the forgery. My mother stood up from the pew so violently that the hymnal text plummeted onto the floorboards. She grabbed her handbag and exited rapidly through the side sanctuary door. The senior leader called out after her departure. She refused to halt her movement. The female council member turned toward my position. I am profoundly sorry, child. I placed my mobile device back into my bag. The situation is not your fault. Following the conclusion of the service, the senior leader contacted my line from the outdoor parking area. I fully believe your account, and I am deeply sorry we failed to ask more penetrating questions prior to today. Exactly 2 weeks remaining until the public auction. I sat deliberately at my working desk inside the accounting firm and reviewed my master operational checklist one absolute final time. Item number 1, a verified cashier's check generated by the financial cooperative, made payable directly to the county administrator, totaling exactly $118,000. I had systematically calculated 65% of the true market valuation plus an additional 5% operational safety buffer. The physical check rested securely inside my desk drawer at my apartment, positioned within a paper envelope inside a fireproof steel security container I had acquired at the corporate supply outlet. Item number 2, limited liability company state registration fully confirmed, the formal operating agreement fully executed, and the unique employer identification number officially on file. Juergens and Associates Consulting constituted a fully functional corporate entity, not a mere superficial business card tucked into a rear pocket, but a legitimate legal entity possessing its own dedicated commercial bank repository, its own unique federal tax identification profile, and its own independent future. Item number 3, my attorney officially registered as the authorized bidder representative for the event. He would physically hold paddle number 14. I would stand directly behind his position. My senior partner comprehended the entire strategy. She had been the absolute first individual I confided in over morning coffee inside her private office with the glass door firmly secured. "Are you absolutely certain regarding this course of action?" she inquired. "When have you ever known me to be uncertain regarding a specific mathematical figure, partner?" She blinked and smiled, not the polite, superficial variety, but a genuine expression of appreciation. "When you successfully acquire that residential structure, what exactly do you intend to execute with the property?" An operational model my mother never once managed. "You articulated that concept previously. What exactly does it signify in reality?" "It signifies that I intend to transform that structure into a place where human beings feel genuinely welcome." That identical evening, I returned to my apartment and executed one additional task. I packed a box, not a massive container, simply a standard cardboard archive box from the supply store. Inside, I organized historical tax filings, every single monthly bank statement documenting 8 full years of consistent out-of-pocket payments, physical printouts of my credit bureau profile, the fraudulent mortgage application paperwork, and the official Federal Trade Commission documentation. I sealed the container securely, wrote the word evidence across the exterior label utilizing a dark marker, and placed the box deep inside my storage closet. Not to deploy in conflict, simply to possess, simply to recognize that every single decimal point was fully accounted for. The evening prior to the public auction, my mobile unit began to vibrate at exactly 10:22. It was my father. I allowed the device to ring 3 full times before I finally accepted the connection. "They are officially selling our residential home tomorrow morning." His vocal delivery was completely stripped of all structural defense, no cautious cadence, no diplomatic cushion, simply a human being facing the total loss of the singular asset remaining in his existence. "I am fully aware, father. 39 years spent inhabiting that residential structure. Your mother and I brought your brother home from the medical facility to that house, and we brought you home to that house as well." He paused briefly. "I physically repaired the covered porch support system twice. Completely replaced the hot water tank in the year 2011, and planted that maple tree in the front lawn area when your mother remarked that the thoroughfare appeared completely barren." He was systematically indexing the features the exact way individuals do when they are desperately attempting to hold a crumbling reality together by simply vocalizing its constituent components. "Is there absolutely any action you can execute to halt this?" "There is absolutely no action I am willing to execute." He detected the critical distinction instantly. I recognize he did because he entered absolute silence for exactly 7 seconds. I counted the intervals mentally. "I fully understand." Then he spoke once more. "I am profoundly sorry I never once stood up in your defense. I deeply desired to execute that action every single time it occurred. I recognize, father. You simply chose not to." "Yes." More heavy silence ensued, the specific variety that rests heavily between two individuals who have completely exhausted all methods of disappointing one another. Your mother is seated inside the darkened living space right this moment, refusing to illuminate the lights. She has remained in that exact position since 5 o'clock. I closed my eyes tightly, not out of sudden emotional sympathy, but out of absolute recognition. I comprehended exactly what it felt like to sit alone in the absolute dark inside that specific residential structure. "Have a peaceful evening, father." "Good night, child." I set the device down, established my morning alarm for 6 a.m., and laid my professional dark blazer out from the storage closet, the exact garment I had acquired for my formal public accounting certification ceremony at the State Convention Center. I had extended a formal invitation to all three of them to attend. Not a single person materialized. Mother claimed she was suffering from a severe migraine. Father claimed he lacked the physical capacity to remain seated for that duration. Brother failed to respond to the digital communication entirely. I pressed the fabric of the blazer slowly, flattening each crease with absolute deliberation. Tomorrow morning wasn't driven by a desire for personal revenge. It was entirely about proper structural accounting, and I was exceptionally proficient at the science of accounting. The exterior steps of the regional courthouse were completely freezing at 9 o'clock in the morning, late in the month of April, as the atmospheric air still carried that sharp northeastern bite. 38 degrees with a solid gray sky, the precise variety of morning where your exhalations generate miniature clouds that completely vanish before you can finish articulating a sentence. I arrived at the location at exactly 8:45, clad in my dark blazer, my hair secured back neatly, holding the thick paper envelope securely beneath my arm. My attorney walked deliberately beside my position clad in a dark charcoal suit, carrying his leather document case and official bitter paddle number 14. We engaged in zero conversation. We had articulated every necessary strategy at his office. I systematically scanned the assembled group. 15, perhaps 20 individuals gathered across the courthouse stone steps and adjacent sidewalk. A collection of independent real estate investors clad in fleece utility vests clutching writing clipboards. 2 immediate neighbors I recognized instantly. The longtime neighbor stood adjacent to the municipal flagpole bundled heavily inside a green winter coat and offered me a small, supportive nod of her head. The minister from the congregation was additionally present, standing at the absolute periphery of the crowd with his hands resting deep within his pockets. And then my gaze located them. My father leaned heavily against the exterior iron balustrade, resting one hand firmly on the metal railing, his secondary hand pressed tightly against his damaged lower lumbar region. He was clad in his ancient canvas working jacket, the specific garment featuring a ripped pocket he had never once bothered to mend. My mother stood directly adjacent to his position clad in the premium burgundy wool coat I had personally purchased for her 3 winters ago. Her hair was perfectly styled, and her cosmetics were immaculately applied. Even at the absolute conclusion of her reality, she dressed meticulously for the public gaze. My brother hung back significantly near the automated parking meters, his arms tightly crossed, his hood pulled completely upward, entirely avoiding eye contact with a single soul in attendance. The designated public auctioneer, a county administrative clerk, established a small portable speaker podium at the absolute summit of the stone steps. He systematically organized his paperwork, adjusted an audio microphone that no one actually required given the quiet, and cleared his throat loudly. A pleasant morning to everyone. We are officially assembled here for the public foreclosure liquidation of residential real estate located at the family address. The initial opening bid is established at $95,000. I drew a deep breath. My attorney smoothly elevated bidder paddle number 14. A real estate investor occupying the front row, clad in casual trousers and a utility vest, raised his hand immediately, 95. A female bidder positioned behind him, 98. The initial investor countered instantly, 101. My attorney elevated our paddle once more, 105. A perfectly steady vocal delivery, completely devoid of urgency, as though he were simply ordering a standard midday meal. The female bidder officially dropped out of the sequence at 108. The investor in the utility vest pushed the threshold further, 110. 112. My attorney countered, 114. The investor reviewed his mobile device screen, typed a rapid message, and looked upward, 114.5. I lightly touched my attorney's forearm, our pre-arranged command signal to conclude the matter. $118,000. My attorney's vocal delivery carried with absolute clarity completely across the courthouse steps. The investor in the utility vest scrutinized his screen one final time, shook his head from side to side, and slid the device deep into his pocket space. Proceeding once at the valuation of $118,000, the auctioneer's vocal delivery was completely flat and procedural, This event constituted a standard Tuesday morning for his department. Proceeding twice. Absolute silence enveloped the steps. 0 competing paddles materialized. Officially sold to bidder number 14, representing Juergens and Associates Consulting Limited Liability Company. My mother's head snapped upward instantly. The specific corporate name struck her physical senses the exact way certain volatile words do, not the underlying meaning initially, simply the phonetic sound of the family surname. She systematically scanned the assembled crowd. My brother stepped rapidly off the concrete curb, his arms unfolding violently. What exactly is transpiring? Who authorized that? My father executed 0 physical movement. He remained stationary at the iron railing, staring intently at the courthouse stone steps as though he were deciphering an inscription carved directly into the concrete surface. The auctioneer proceeded with the protocol. Will bidder 14 please approach the podium with the certified funds and valid identification for official processing? My attorney stepped forward toward the platform, document case in hand. My mother physically pushed her way through 2 separate onlookers to reach the immediate podium zone. Who exactly is that individual? What entity purchased our residential house? My attorney turned toward her position, completely professional and entirely composed. My client, the sole principal operating owner of the consulting firm. My mother's vocal pitch accelerated significantly higher. That is our family name. Who exactly? And then I deliberately stepped forward from behind my attorney's position, entering the open physical space separating my legal representative and my biological mother, clad in my dark blazer, my hair secured back, clutching the thick paper envelope within my left hand. A pleasant morning, Mother. My mother stared intently at my face, her mouth opening fully, closing rapidly, and opening once more. The premium burgundy wool coat I had purchased for her appeared to constrict tightly across her shoulders, or perhaps she was simply withdrawing her physical form completely inward. You purchased our residential home. The consulting firm legally acquired this real estate property at a public foreclosure liquidation auction, entirely legally, utilizing documented financial resources that I personally earned over the course of 8 full years of professional labor. I elevated the paper envelope into view, every single monthly payment fully verified, every single dollar completely accounted for. I operate as a professional accountant, Mother. Analyzing numbers represents my core discipline. My brother shoved past 2 onlookers and planted his physical form barely 3 feet from my position. You possess absolutely no right to execute this action. That structure constitutes our family residence. You cannot buy an individual's home. I did not acquire an individual's home. I purchased a completely foreclosed real estate asset in the exact identical fashion that any independent buyer at this public auction could have executed. The single defining difference is that I comprehend every single structural fracture within that concrete foundation, given that I personally financed the repairs to patch them. My mother's vocal delivery returned, pitched significantly higher now, visibly vibrating with intensity. After absolutely everything we sacrificed and did for you, what exactly did you do for me? I inquired calmly, refusing to elevate my voice, completely refusing to project accusation, simply asking the exact way a professional requests a client to clarify an outstanding corporate invoice. Name a single item, Mother, just one. She parted her lips to speak, yet absolutely nothing emerged from her throat. I will gladly index some specific items that I personally executed: 312 individual mortgage payments, 8 consecutive years of premium medical insurance coverage for father, utility invoices settled every single month, and municipal property assessments paid twice annually, totaling $186,000, extracted directly from the child you explicitly labeled a heavy burden at your own holiday feast table. The surrounding crowd had transitioned into absolute stillness. The long-time neighbor had her hand pressed firmly over her mouth. The minister had removed his eyewear entirely and was cradling the frames loosely at his side. You explicitly stated I was consistently a burden, I proceeded calmly. A true financial burden lacks the capacity to finance 312 individual checks. A burden lacks the capability to command $118,000 within a verified cashier's check. And a burden completely lacks the capacity to construct a successful limited liability company and acquire a residential property at a public auction. My brother lunged forward aggressively. My father gripped his arm instantly, moving with a degree of physical speed I had not witnessed from him in many years. Relinquish the property. My brother was vociferously shouting now, pulling hard against my father's physical grip. That constitutes our house, you possess no right to seize it. I did not seize anything, you independently lost the property through your own actions, utilizing a completely forged signature, a fabricated legal notarization, and $47,000 you systematically expended on a luxury vehicle and 2 separate vacation trips to Las Vegas. My brother immediately ceased all physical pulling. His facial complexion went completely white. My mother emitted a loud scream, not articulating words, simply raw, unadulterated sound, completely shapeless, the precise variety of noise an individual generates when every single fictional version of the narrative they have told themselves collapses entirely at the identical moment. A courthouse security officer immediately stepped forward into the space. The longtime neighbor remained completely motionless. The minister replaced his eyewear slowly, resembling an individual who had just witnessed a profound event he required significantly more time to analyze carefully. The immediate noise gradually dissipated. My mother's scream transitioned into heavy breathing, hard, ragged exhalations, the specific variety that manifests after you have completely emptied your internal reserves and absolutely nothing remains to project. The courthouse security officer positioned himself firmly between my brother and the remainder of our group, holding one hand elevated with his palm completely flat. My father maintained his firm grip on my brother's forearm. My brother had completely ceased all physical resistance. He was staring blankly down at the stone ground. I extracted a single document page from my thick paper envelope. I had systematically typed the text the evening prior, formatting the content the exact way I structure a professional corporate business proposal, clean, perfectly centered, and thoroughly professional. This real estate property will be completely renovated and structurally converted into a specialized community resource facility dedicated to assisting women and families navigating severe crisis situations. The operational facility will formally provide temporary transitional housing units, comprehensive financial literacy instruction workshops, legal aid navigation referrals, and professional family counseling services. I elevated my gaze from the printed page. The assembled crowd was watching intently. Not my biological family, they had officially ceased to function as my audience a very long time ago. I was speaking directly to the community. The facility will be officially titled the Millfield Family Center. I neatly folded the document page and slid it securely back inside the envelope. This residential structure never once constituted a true home to my existence, but it is officially destined to become a true home for human beings who genuinely require one. My father closed his eyes tightly, and 2 distinct tears traveled down his worn cheeks. He made no effort to wipe them away. He simply remained stationary at that location with his hand resting firmly on my brother's arm and his eyes tightly shut, resembling a man standing unprotected in severe weather he possessed absolutely no capacity to escape from. My brother muttered an incoherent phrase I couldn't distinctly hear. His vocal delivery had gone completely thin. All of his superficial bluster had evaporated entirely, and what remained exposed was simply a man clad in a hooded sweatshirt on a freezing morning coming to the absolute realization that the asset he had stolen and the asset he had lost were ultimately part of the exact same transaction. The long-time neighbor stepped forward dynamically from the crowd. I desire to formally volunteer my personal services, followed immediately by the first council leader, then the female council member from the congregation, and subsequently a woman I did not recognize. Much later in the year, I discovered her identity was Denise, a mother of 3 young children who had courageously exited a highly abusive marital situation the prior calendar cycle. My mother stood completely isolated. The structure of the crowd had visibly shifted. They were no longer clustered around her position, they were assembled directly around me. The onlookers dispersed slowly, the specific way groups do when they have personally witnessed a profound human event they will actively discuss for many years to come. Multiple individuals shook my hand warmly, and a few offered genuine embraces. My attorney managed the completion of the official paperwork with the county administrative clerk inside the courthouse facility. My mother walked directly toward her vehicle without offering a single backward glance. My brother followed 10 paces behind her position, his mobile device pressed tightly to his ear, already actively calling someone. My father remained He stood stationary at the absolute base of the courthouse stone steps with his hands tucked deep within his jacket pockets, observing my movements the exact way an individual watches a plane depart into the sky, fully recognizing it was traveling to a destination he lacked the capacity to follow. I walked over to his position, and we faced each other directly. You successfully acquired the residential structure, yes. To provide assistance to human beings, yes. He nodded his head slowly, the motion careful and deliberate, as though executing it caused physical discomfort. He reached deep within his canvas jacket and extracted a folded piece of paper, old, visibly yellowed, and remarkably soft along its creases. I discovered this artifact inside the attic space last week, and I intended to dispose of it before the financial institution seized the premises. He extended the paper toward me, and I carefully unfolded the document. My mathematics competition championship certification from the 8th grade, absolute first place at the state level, 14 years of age, the exact evening no one in that household celebrated. He had personally preserved it. I was profoundly proud of your achievement, he whispered. I deeply desire for you to comprehend that reality now. I looked down at the old certificate, then shifted my gaze directly to his eyes. Goodbye, Father. I folded the paper neatly and slid it securely into my interior blazer pocket, the specific pocket resting directly close to my chest cavity. Following that, I walked directly toward my vehicle, refusing to offer a single backward glance. Seated comfortably inside the driver's seat, the engine operating smoothly, my hands resting firmly on the steering wheel, I pondered the specific phrase my father had articulated across the phone line that evening, inquire with your pride and joy. I had confronted my brother, but sitting there alone with a legal real estate deed bearing my exclusive name and a childhood certificate resting in my pocket, I realized the historical phrase had been completely erroneous. Not a single person within that biological family had ever functioned as my pride, and not a single soul had ever represented my joy. Those specific metrics belonged entirely to me now. I shifted the vehicle into drive. 3 full months elapsed, and the spring season transitioned smoothly into the summer months. The established legal architecture executed precisely what legal architectures do, slowly, procedurally, and completely devoid of human passion. My brother was formally charged with criminal identity theft and corporate bank fraud by the Regional District Attorney's Office. My attorney had additionally filed a formal complaint with the federal prosecutor's office, but the federal authorities officially deferred their case in absolute favor of the localized state prosecution. My brother ultimately accepted a formal plea arrangement, 18 months of strict legal probation, a permanent felony conviction stamped upon his public record, and a mandate for full financial restitution directed to me, totaling $47,000, to be systematically paid over the course of 5 years utilizing garnished wages extracted directly from the commercial warehouse position he was finally forced to accept. He physically loaded heavy wooden pallets at a distribution facility situated outside the city, generating $12 an hour, possessing 0 business cards. The accomplice permanently lost his legal notary authorization. The State Department officially revoked his commission completely after the financial institution formally validated the fraudulent notarization process. He was assessed a significant personal fine of $5,000 and legally barred from ever reapplying for the credential. My mother and father completely vacated the residential structure at the family address exactly 2 weeks following the conclusion of the public auction. My mother's sister accepted them into her home. Her residence in the adjacent town possessed an extra bedroom, but the aunt explicitly requested their departure after a mere 2 months, far too much interpersonal drama, she explained directly to my father. They subsequently relocated into a very modest 1-bedroom rental apartment located within the city center. My father survived exclusively on his monthly disability allocation. My mother accepted a part-time retail position at a local textile storefront, cutting raw fabric materials and operating a manual cash register, representing her absolute first revenue-generating employment position in 26 full years. The residential structure on the thoroughfare was completely gutted internally and systematically rebuilt throughout the summer duration. I deployed $50,000 directly from my limited liability company repository, $40,000 obtained through a specialized community development grant I successfully applied for through the regional administration, and $10,000 provided directly by my senior partner, who generated a personal check the identical day I informed her the architectural plans were officially approved. Fresh interior walls, brand new flooring systems, clean coats of paint, a professional reception counter positioned within the front entryway where the old holiday dining table used to rest, for fully independent transitional housing apartment units constructed upstairs where the traditional bedrooms had historically been located, and a comprehensive communal meeting facility established in the basement level, the precise space that had historically constituted my brother's territory. The Millfield Family Center officially opened its doors to the public in the month of March. On the official opening day, I stood stationary inside the front entryway room and surveyed the completed environment. The interior walls were finished in a bright light gray tone, completely replacing the dark wood paneling my mother had never permitted anyone to alter. The flooring systems were composed of brand new oak laminate, exceptionally clean and perfectly even. A large canvas banner was suspended elegantly directly above the reception counter. Every single human being deserves a place at the table. The longtime neighbor officially severed the ceremonial ribbon utilizing a standard pair of kitchen shears she had transported from her home, given that not a single person had remembered to acquire oversized ceremonial scissors for the event. The minister from the congregation delivered a brief spiritual blessing over the space. My senior partner captured multiple digital photographs utilizing her mobile device. Exactly 47 separate individuals had officially registered to operate as dedicated community volunteers. I comprehended the exact metric because I personally managed the master data spreadsheet. A young individual named Maria crossed the threshold of the facility exactly 20 minutes following the conclusion of the ribbon-cutting ceremony. She was accompanied by 2 young children, a boy measuring roughly 4 years of age and a girl measuring approximately 6. She inquired quietly regarding the availability of the transitional housing units. I sat down comfortably with her at the main reception counter, retrieved the official intake documentation forms, and initiated the process of asking standard structured questions: her full legal name, her current immediate residential situation, the exact number of dependent children, and an emergency contact individual. The methodology was completely identical to the way I execute a new corporate client's tax intake process: perfectly calm, entirely professional, and exceptionally thorough, yet fundamentally different. This specific time, the numerical data translated directly into human shelter. The figures meant a real human being would be sleeping securely inside a clean bed tonight instead of inside a vehicle. I glanced briefly at the exact wall section where the old family holiday portrait had historically hung. 3 smiling countenances, never 4. Its historical place was now occupied by a beautifully framed duplication of the center's official mission statement, thoroughly signed by every single community volunteer, documenting 47 individual signatures, all entirely authentic. I acquired the profound understanding that the absolute heaviest object an individual can physically carry throughout their existence isn't someone else's residential mortgage note or someone else's fragile personal pride. It is the deeply entrenched psychological belief that you automatically owe your entire adult existence to individuals who never once uttered a basic word of gratitude. That specific realization marks the absolute location where my personal narrative terminates, and the point where the Millfield Family Center officially begins. 312 independent checks, a single fraudulent signature, and a holiday fabric napkin I neatly folded but completely chose never to pick back up. If you have ever operated as the silent pillar keeping an entire reality structurally sound, the individual they consistently forgot to validate, you already deeply comprehend what truly carries value. Please share this narrative, leave a comment below, and subscribe to Quiet Justice Tales.